What's going on, my fellow troops? My name is Xavvo and welcome back to a brand new video. So today I'm going to be giving you guys a bunch of tips on how you can get better at Modern Warfare 3. And this doesn't just go for Modern Warfare 3. I could generally just call this how to get better at Call of Duty, because truth be told, every Call of Duty is just a new year with slightly different mechanics, but it all has the general same principles that I'm going to cover in this video that apply to all of them. So if you're looking to get better at Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, Modern Warfare 2019, Black Ops Cold War, Vanguard, if you're still playing that shit, whatever it is, there is always the ability to get better. So I'm going to give you about 8 tips. So let's jump straight into it. So the first tip I have to give you is just to make sure you have a solid internet speed. Now, this shouldn't come as a surprise. I myself have, had a pretty shit internet, and just the other day I managed to get it resolved. I fixed it more or less. I do get a bit of lag. It can kick in quite a bit, but it jumps back to normal pretty much immediately. But if you guys have been around on the channel for a bit, you'll know that I have had some of the worst latency that man has ever seen in humankind and history. It is fucking awful. I have had some of the worst latency ever. It's just terrible, and I have put up with that for the better half of maybe 2 years, and it has significantly reduced how well I can do in game, and the only times I've ever done the best has been when the internet isn't at its worst. So, generally speaking, this should be a rule of thumb for everybody. Fix your fucking internet. And if you cannot fix your internet, if you don't find some workaround to solve what the problem is, or you can't make the upgrade, there is some things you can do about that. If you're stuck in a predicament where you have a certain internet that isn't so great, or you generally just find that you just can't upgrade because it's what's provided to your general area, or maybe you don't have the money to upgrade, there is some things you can do. So the first thing I would recommend is, for all the devices that you're not using whilst you're playing, whether it's your own devices or maybe you have some siblings, I know it might be a bit annoying, but if you have some siblings who have a bunch of devices that are connected to Wi-Fi and they're not using them, you can kindly ask them, if they can turn the internet off those devices if they're genuinely not using them. I'm not talking like they have the phone next to them and they're letting it play whilst playing their Xbox, like that kind of thing. Don't do it like that, but I mean, like, if they've got a bunch of devices that are just not being used at all, like a laptop sat under the bed gathering dust and it's got fucking cobwebs in it, that you can tell them, to disconnect the Wi-Fi. Because here's the thing, with all these different devices you have running, every single one of them that's logged onto a Wi-Fi and is signed in or connected, they actually classify as a client on your internet, which does slow down the speeds, and it significantly takes a massive hit to your performance on consoles, because consoles are known for consuming a large majority of your bandwidth. They take up a lot of internet. They really do require a lot to run smoothly, to have minimal lag spikes, or just to not have jittery freezing problems and all that sort of stuff. So make sure you fix your internet, guys. That should be, I think, something that everyone can understand, but of course there are ways you can fix it. In my case, have had terrible internet for, as I say, for the better half of 2 years since I got a new booster, and it was fucking ass. I don't know what happened to it, but it was worse than the other one. And just today, we were messing around with it, and we plugged an Ethernet cable that had been running up through my brother's room, and we plugged that into the actual Wi-Fi, and that fixed it. That made the signal much better. So that's a general fact as well. If you have wireless internet, you can always make the upgrade. It might cost you about £8, $10, whatever you want to say. They're not generally that expensive, just to get 10 meters of Ethernet cable that you can just run from your router to your wireless, if that's what you're using, and that can make all the difference. Or just if you happen to live on your own, which I can imagine is a lot of you are probably my age, but if you live on your own, you can always run an Ethernet cable from your router to your Xbox, and that will fix your lag immediately, because that has worked for 2 of my brothers for the whole time and they've not had any lag, and it gives you direct wired perfect internet speed. So sorry I rambled on that one a bit too much, but that is absolutely a huge must. Make sure you have solid internet, and that will make sure you're not held back and your performance isn't hindered in any way. So make sure you have good internet. Number 2, the next way you can become a god, a pro at Call of Duty, is to improve your aiming. Now, this is not as self-explanatory as it sounds. Of course, there is layers to this. Now, the way I personally have managed to build up quite a great aiming skill, I guess, over the years, even though it's not like optic scump level or anything like that, I have definitely gotten very good aim, and I have oftentimes come in number 1 on the leaderboard game after game, until the point that Call of Duty, of course, punishes me and shoves me into some skill-based matchmaking ranked play sweatfest. But needless to say, I do pretty well on the average game, and part of the reason is aim. Aim is very crucial to actually perform and to succeed in your matches. So one way I can give you some tips that people don't often talk about in Call of Duty on how you can improve your aim. For example, the main times you're going to notice your aim may go sloppy or inaccurate is when you're coming into contact with players. So when you're in those close quarter engagements where you're sliding around a corner and you stress out and you don't know where to aim, I have got some tips on how you can, hit those shots a bit better. So something I do that specifically works for me is I focus, like I death stare my screen. So like you see where the little dot is in the middle of the screen, like the aiming cross or the dot, right where you see that, that little tiny dot on your screen, you want to focus on that, like just really focus on it. I'm not saying focus on it to the point where you're not taking in who's around you, but I mean, do it momentarily as you're closing in on the enemy. So when you see the players there and you're about to aim, you're literally taking a look at that dot where the crosshairs are, and you're making sure just to meet it up, like match it with their head. It honestly works. I don't know why, it really works. And that is something I actually kind of explained in the past about 2-3 years ago when I made a how to quit scope video in Modern Warfare 2019, because it generally works. When you focus on landing the shot because you're actually trying to make it meet with the head, it works. It generally works because you're focusing more on where you land your shot. So that's something I definitely do. And another thing that is very useful for this is when you're actually sliding around corners and someone's moving, something I do is I actually aim slightly more to the left or the right of them, depending which way I'm moving. So let's say I'm coming around a corner and I'm sliding and I'm going like this, right? I'm sliding this way and there's a player in front of me. I'm not going to aim more that way because he's moving this way as I'm sliding past him. So what I want to do is aim slightly more to my left. So if I'm sliding to the right, aim slightly to the left, just a little bit, not too much, just a tiny bit, maybe a millimeter or centimeter in real life on your screen. It's like not a huge difference, but just slightly aim to the left of them if you're sliding to the right, and if you're sliding to the left, of course, aim slightly more to the right. The way this works is that you basically land your shot into them as they're moving with your slide. Basically, that's the best way I can explain it, but don't aim straight at them if you're moving because you're just going to miss the shot. And of course, something you can also do just to be extra sure is to aim when you're doing it slightly diagonally above the head, because a lot of players have a habit of jumping in the air. For some reason, they have a habit of jumping in the air when you're, about to slide into them because it's just their instinct, I guess. They just want to jump out of the way. So aim slightly diagonally upwards and you'll likely hit them in the head as well. And it's obviously just to hit your headshot as well. You're more likely to if you aim slightly upwards. So that is my sort of 2 little mini tips inside of the main tip for aiming. As it goes for snipers, it should be just that when you're landing sniper shots, aim slightly above the head. That is kind of a given, and depending on the range that you're at, if it feels like the bullet might need to travel a bit further, aim a little bit higher. And so yeah, that's my general tips for, aiming better. Now the third point, the third tip that we're going with here is to utilize the movement. So this, again, like I say, these points can be applied to any game, whatever it is. You just got to understand the movement. So if you've played Modern Warfare 3 enough, you're going to realize there's kind of a slide cancelling movement thing you can do. There is a fast movement, so it's not a slow-paced game. And you're going to notice that, of course, other players might jump about, or they might, crouch and slide and diving, like dolphin dives. So when you get a hold and you get a feel for the movement, you need to try and use it to your advantage. So if you see someone is running into you, right, oftentimes I slide because then I'm below them and it catches them off guard. Another thing you can do is, of course, dolphin dive onto the floor and then shoot them, or you can drop shot. Now, drop shotting is essentially when someone walks in front of you and you go from standing to crouching to proning immediately. And this will come into a little bit later in the video with settings, because you will need to swap a setting around specifically if you haven't done this yet, and that will help you. But generally speaking, you can do a lot of different things in terms of movement to catch people off guard and to beat them in the gunfight. I've definitely improved by doing that myself. So yeah, you definitely want to utilize your movement. Just slide around more, utilize the slide cancel. In this game, the slide cancel isn't like 2019. So what you want to do is to slide, jump a little bit, slide again, slide, jump, and slide again. It's kind of like that. You basically got to jump every so often just to recharge your tactical stance, or your tactical sprint, I should say. So you can recharge it by doing that. And of course, making sure when you're using your movement, you're also hiding behind objects. So you're sliding, going behind something, sliding quickly, jumping into someone. Movement is definitely crucial to making you far, far better than everyone else in your your lobby if you use it to your advantage. The fourth thing that I'm going to say is pretty obvious, I feel like, to a lot of people, but it's just to improve your class setups. A lot of people are walking around using either default classes or they've just slapped a gun on and put a bunch of attachments on it that they don't even know what they do. They just think they sound good and they just run with it. And their classes are awful. They've got recoil that's dragging the gun right up their screen as they shoot. They've got like really slow mobility so they can barely move around to their best ability. So they're walking like they're holding a goddamn fucking fridge in their hand or some shit. It's bad. Like seriously, some people have awful class setups and they don't know what they're doing. So a quick tip, maybe just a little plug, is watch my class setup. Subscribe. I'm making Modern Warfare 3 class setups at the moment. So if you want some best class setups, you can just sub to this channel. That works. But if you don't want to do that, there is many channels that provide lots of class setups. You just got to search up whichever gun you're doing and look for the best class. Of course, there is no one best class setup. Everyone who's saying that is lying to you. That when someone says it's the best class, it's just to say it's their best, and it's kind of clickbait as well if you think about it, because that is how YouTube works now, unfortunately. But yeah, there is no one best class setup. A lot of class setups can be professional in one place and be subpar in another, and they kind of, you know, can compete in different elements. But yeah, just select a best class setup. No one says you have to be a professional at knowing how guns work. Just look up a best class if you don't know how to make a really good class setup for your gun. And if you've been playing for a while and you're kind of getting a feel for certain guns and you see them release each year and you recognize that this gun's the AK and this gun's the Model 680 shotgun or this gun's the 725, you're going to generally know how a lot of these guns work just by, you know, repetition and from experience. So a lot of those guns you'll think, oh, that one needs a lot of recoil control on it. This one needs some better mobility. This one needs better sprint to fire speed, that kind of thing, right? You'll generally kind of catch on to that over the years when you see guns you recognize. But as for most players, there's nothing embarrassing about playing the game and getting to know how the gun works. That is kind of how you just go with every game. I think every player does that as well. So get a feel for the gun, feel what feels wrong about it, and you'll quickly kind of gather a bit of knowledge on how each element of the gun works and how you can improve them in their own areas if you want to do it yourself. And yeah, so that's my general tips for class setups. Now on to the fifth one, and it's map awareness. So map awareness is essentially knowing how the map works, all the avenues, the hiding spots, the peak spots, everything. You need map awareness, and this will naturally come to you actually from one of my later points I'll make in this video. This comes actually back to this, because map awareness is very much based off how much you play the game. If you play the game a lot, you've played a map a multiple number of times, or hell, let's say, you know, you play Modern Warfare 3 and you've seen this map like 10 years ago and you're an experienced Call of Duty OG, you're going to know this map very well, and you're going to know that a lot of the sites and the hiding spots are going to be pretty much exactly the same. There might be an exception to maybe some things they've changed up, you know, this year, but most of the maps look exactly the same according to OGs as they did in the older games. So if you've played a map a lot, you'll start to get a good feel for what kind of general areas people tend to hide at, where you're going to need to look out for players a lot, which parts of the map are the most busiest. So like the middle parts of the map, maybe it's the middle lane of a map. For example, on Shoot House, that part of the map is usually pretty dodgy for sniping. So once you get awareness for that, you think, I'm not going to stand in the middle of the map because someone will snipe me. You get a feel for a map and you start to know what parts of the map are the most busiest, where people are hiding a lot, and where you can utilize hiding spots and how you can get about without getting shot from afar. So generally, just make sure you improve your map awareness. Just get used to the maps and take in your environment and try and learn where people tend to camp a lot, because there's a lot of fucking campers to put up with this year. So you're going to need to know that. And you'll generally be able to avoid a lot of players a lot better and be able to sneak up on people and be a lot more tactical. So that's my next tip. Now on to the next tip, and this is to have good settings. So I'm actually going to give you my settings because I personally, and I hate to boast, but I think my settings are pretty good. And I think this is pretty much the same settings I had in MW2. I didn't have to change this shit. Like, it carried over from MW2 and it still works on this game. We all know how this game's a DLC game, basically, so that's why it all carried over. But essentially, I generally run a 6 for horizontal and 6 stick sensitivity. You know, I run 6 on vertical stick sensitivity. If you, of course, like it a bit higher, you can always go above, but I generally recommend around 6 to 8. This is for controller, so I apologize to anyone who is, of course, on PC. This is controller only. But you can can watch plenty of good videos about that on your PCs to find out what you can use. But as far as console players go, make sure you're running about 48 or 50 for brightness. You don't want the game to be too dark, and you don't want it to look too washed out either. And of course, if you're on controller, make sure that you have got your button layout set to tactical. This is what comes back to the whole drop shotting. Tactical actually swaps B and the right stick. So when you're using the right stick to, to slide and dive instead of B, you're actually going to be a lot better at the game. And this is kind of a known fact now. I think a lot of people have been saying this since Modern Warfare 2019, but if you're still using the right stick to melee when you hold it down and B to slide and to dolphin dive and shit, you'll be surprised at just how bad you possibly are at the game is probably because of that. Generally speaking, like how that one little few milliseconds you have to take to move your finger off the stick can get you killed. So make sure you're running tactical for button layout, and yeah, you'll get used to it pretty quickly, so don't worry about that. In terms of dead zone, you generally want to make sure that it's kind of like in a fine middle ground. It's not drifting too much, so make sure you've got that set up properly. ADS sensitivity multiplier, put that on 1. You don't want that too high. And as far as tactical stance sensitivity, I've got that on 1 as well. I haven't changed that. Aim response curve type should be on linear. You also want to have ADS sense multiplier on 1, which is the maximum. And yeah, generally speaking, most of this is, I think, default stuff. So
the only other major setting in here that I forgot to mention that you should definitely change is field of view if you haven't already. So put that to 120 or at least anywhere over 100 as long as you're comfortable with it. But it basically gives you more peripheral view. So it actually doesn't just look better aesthetically, but it just actually improves how much you can see in your range of view. So as for everything else, if you just want to quickly change it or copy it to look like mine, you can do. I'll just give you a quick view through all of them. Make sure, weapon and motion blur and stuff is all switched off. That also will affect how your game looks. Make sure you've got some fidelity casts turned on just to sharpen the gameplay up. Just stuff like that, like little touch-ups like that will definitely improve the game, especially the motion-related stuff, because that blurriness will definitely ruin your gameplay and it'll make it harder to see people when you're turning your screen fast. So yeah.
Personally, I don't have music too loud in this game as well. I know that music can be a bit stressful and it can distract you a bit whilst you're in game, so turn your music down a bit if it's sounding a bit loud, in certain parts of the game, in maybe the start of the game or the end part of the game. You don't want loud music. That can be kind of distracting on your game and where you can hear footsteps and stuff, so you want to turn that down a bit. But yeah, so have good settings. The 7th one, and it's going to sound boring, and I know people are going to hate me for this, they're going to be moaning, but just practice and play the game enough. That is a general rule of thumb. There's probably going to be some people who've come to this video trying to get better at Modern Warfare 3 or whatever COD game they're playing, but they're only willing to sit and play it once a week, if that. And you're not going to get good, Chief. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm just going to be very real with you. You're not going to be good. You're always going to be ass because you're not playing the game enough. This goes for any game. I'm not saying everyone nowadays should have to sweat because Call of Duty's become a sweat fest. No, this goes for any game. If you are a wide variety gamer who likes to play tons and tons of games, just accept the loss at that point. Just accept that if you're not willing to stick to one game and focus a lot more time on that game over the others, you're never going to really be good at any one game because you're playing a large variety of games in, little small bite sizes over the week or whatever. So you're never really going to be able to get good at one. So that's something you're going to have to accept if you're one of those people who like to play a lot of video games. But if you happen to play Call of Duty mostly, or you play a certain game mostly, you're going to get pretty good at it. And you don't have to be some phase player. Like, generally, it's not that difficult. If you have a game and you play it a lot, you practice, repetition is key. I mean, literally, you do it at least 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be every day. You can play 3 times a week and you will definitely get better. It's very simple. I sometimes myself have taken quite big hiatuses from Call of Duty just from demotivation or burnout from camo grinding, and I can come back and still destroy an entire lobby even though I've not played it in like 5-6 days or maybe a week or so. It's true. Genuinely, once you get good at a game and you've practiced it a lot, maybe you'll be a bit sloppy when you come back. Your aim might not be quite so good and you might not be quite in the feel of things. Maybe if you've been playing a different game with different feeling, movement and stuff like that, maybe it'll be a bit weird. It might throw you off, but once you get adjusted, you'll get right back into it again. It's as simple as that. Like, if you have practiced a game a lot and you play it a lot more than other games and you at least put a lot of time into it, you're just guaranteed going to get better. And that is just something that has to be said because it's just a fact. On to the 8th and final tip, and this one's going to sound pretty funny. I know a lot of people are going to laugh at me and say this guy's not serious, but the fact that I should even have to say that is kind of embarrassing. It's kind of a good example of what's come to people nowadays, but it's actually just to drink enough fluids. That sounds really stupid. I know, it sounds goofy to a lot of you gamers who think, cringe, he's coming with a health guru advice. Ugh, drink more, I don't want to do that. Well, then accept the fucking loss, my dude. You drink a lot of fluids, it doesn't just improve your gaming skills, it just improves your overall focus in all elements of life, guys. Just have enough to drink. If you guys have watched Noisy Butters before, you'll probably have scrolled past her channel once or a few times if you've looked for camo grinding videos, but she often says at the end of her videos or in the start of her videos that, guys, you should make sure to drink your water and stuff like that. And it's not a surprise. Why? Because it makes the whole world of a difference. Back when I was, sadly or embarrassingly enough, only drinking about 2 or 3 drinks a day because I just couldn't be bothered or I wasn't trying to look after myself, and this was like maybe 5 months ago, I was just agitated. I couldn't focus. My concentration was awful. I used to get stressed out over every little thing in the game. I would get bitter and angry, and then that would further just like spiral my anger to the point where I wasn't even focused on the game. I was just rage shooting, like I wasn't even hitting my shots. Like, you will actually suffer horrendously in game just as simply from not having enough to drink. I'm not even being funny. If you have at least like 6 to 8 drinks a day, and that is usually about 250 milliliters, is about 1 glass apparently, according to the health research, as people like to say. Yeah, you will basically be completely switched on. Your focus will be clear. You'll have no headaches. You won't be like, tired and fatigued. You'll just feel great, and you'll be focusing and you'll be destroying your lobbies. So yes, guys, I'm serious. The 8th final tip is just to have enough drinks. And I'm not saying substitute your 8 drinks a day for alcohol, guys. Come on, don't be idiots. Just be healthy, guys. We don't need more people dying from fucking drug poisons and shit like that, do we? Drink more water. Just have enough drinks throughout the day, guys, and your focusing and your skill will just significantly increase in game, and that's just a fact. I don't know what to tell you. So yeah, that is everything. That is all my tips on how I am good at the game, or just how you can get better at Call of Duty or Modern Warfare 3. You just have to implement those in some capacity, or at least, practice them, and you will start to get a lot better. But hopefully you guys did enjoy. If it helped you out, be sure to smash a big thumbs up on the video, and of course, drop a comment down below to let me know anything else you would recommend, or what you guys have done and what you think of this video. And yeah, it would really be appreciated. Obviously, check out the playlists down below and all the other socials. You can check out my players for Modern Warfare 3, and you can also check out all the other videos that are related to this video. And of course, be sure to check out the Discord if you're not being notified by YouTube. I have a Discord server where you can send suggestions in there, and you can get notified for my latest videos. So yeah, make sure you do that if your notification bell isn't working. But other than that, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye, guys.